we are basically building all these foundation models, but our core focus is on the Indian languages side. Most of these Western models that are out there, they lack our languages and especially the context that how we work.
So from India for the globe, right?
Exactly. GPT-3 happened, it just bombarded. The research was now commercializable and a lot of people actually started seeing a lot of value out of it.
Who you see as competitors in like the sort of work that you are trying to do? How did you find your first users? What was that process like? Okay, you're building AI, but the need for human emotion and connection does not go away, right? That is essential in building that AI.
Yes.
Would you like to disclose the figure?
Oh man. इसको controversy create
So would you like to disclose that figure of your angel round? Hi guys. Today we have someone with us who's building AI for Indian languages. Basically, he's building DeepSeek from India. Usually, we are very dependent on models that are created in the US for creating applications, and it's so ingrained in our day-to-day tasks. But with the work that he is doing, we will be able to use something that is homegrown and understands the Indian context in the best way possible. Hi, Abhishek.
Hey, hi.
Abhishek is the founder of Soketlabs AI, and let's hear it from Abhishek on what he is building.
Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me. So Socket AI is a frontier lab, and by frontier, we are basically building all these foundation models, but our core focus is on the Indian languages side. I think you would have seen as of now that most of these Western models that are out there, be it closed source models or open source models, they lack our languages and especially the context that how we work, how we understand different subjects, say for example. Essentially, we are trying to inculcate the knowledge of our own languages, our own culture into these foundation models, and essentially not just build for India, but also build for the globe. Essentially, trying to do what DeepSeek did out of China, just crashed the market, created some amazing technology out of.
So from India for the globe, right?
Exactly. So that is what we are doing. And the core mission is not just to build a foundation model. We essentially want to look towards building AGI, or at least converge towards AGI. AGI is Artificial General Intelligence, which is basically the state of intelligence, which is almost equivalent to the state of human mind. Right? So while we converge towards it, it's a larger goal. It will take some time. Towards that goal, we'll be creating all these foundation models. And then these foundation models can actually build more derivative applications that will be impactful in the social sector for corporates or for anybody who wants to leverage AI into their day-to-day work or maybe whatever they want to build out of it.
That is a super interesting space to definitely work on.
Yes, it's super exciting, especially right now with all the craziness happening in AI. Super exciting.
That is amazing. But was there a eureka moment that sort of led you to this?
So I have been in the AI research side of things for almost a decade now. Started with my undergraduation where I was working on computer vision related applications. So I have seen the space evolving right from 2011 where ImageNet movement happened, and essentially what happened in that movement, that neural network came into light, and especially at scale, and we saw what all these artificial neural networks can actually do. And from there we have a lot of architectural innovation that ultimately happened. We have recurrent neural networks, LSTMs came out, and then ultimately in 2017 Google published the Transformers paper, which is the attention paper. I don't think anybody gave emphasis on that paper during that particular time, but then ChatGPT or like OpenAI came along. They had a very simple thesis or hypothesis that what if we apply that same mechanism but at scale? We give a lot of data, a lot of compute to that particular architecture and see where it actually takes us. And that ultimately gave us GPT-2 first. I don't think a lot of people know about ChatGPT-2 or GPT-2. But then when GPT-3 happened, it just bombarded. Like the research was now commercializable, and a lot of people actually started seeing a lot of value out of it. I think that's the boom. That's the state where all of us actually started realizing that, AI is beyond research. Let's just take it out of research and let's just build something which can be commercialized or which can maybe everybody can actually leverage and utilize for their day-to-day things.
For sure. And while you were doing your research and you came across these papers, or like how this journey was progressing across the globe, what was that point? Was it the launch of GPT-2 or like the Google research paper? What was that point when you thought, okay, this can be something that can be commercialized, or you had your business idea? What was that point?
So it was definitely the GPT movement, because I think that was the first instance. So AI or ML has been part of our day-to-day lives for a very long time, right?
Okay.
We have been used to recommendation systems, but these were very simple. Comparatively or with reference to the AI as of today, these are very simplified systems. We have been using them on whenever we are shopping, whenever we were maybe ordering groceries or something of that sort. These systems always existed. I think, but these systems were in the background. That was the thing. We never really got to see that, okay, if some website is suggesting me some particular clothes.
Never thought of it as AI, right?
AI, It was just like a system, AI working in the back end, never gave any sort of emphasis on that particular system. But when ChatGPT movement happened, I think people saw firsthand, people experienced firsthand what AI can do. And it was direct. It was not indirect. AI was not in the background. It was right at the forefront, and people could see value being created out of it. I think that was the moment where I think ultimately AI emerged from research to commercialization, and then a lot of people actually start thinking about how do I take this forward? What can I do with this particular technology?
Makes sense. So my next question would be, once you commenced on this journey, what was that first big challenge that you encountered, and how did you deal with that?
I think challenge, especially building foundation models, is still a challenge. It's data for sure. Especially when you look at Indian languages. So the kind of scale of data that you require, or what people have ultimately utilized, especially say for English, is the entire internet. Internet is huge. We have taken close to 35 years to evolve and create content on the internet, right? And that's the entire humanity's contribution on the internet. What researchers or OpenAI has done is they have taken all that knowledge that resided on the internet and ultimately showed it to an architecture, a mathematical formulation to create intelligence. Now, for Indians to create almost equivalent amount of data for our languages, and by the way, if you go by the classical case, say for example, if I have to train a model on Hindi, ideally I would want equivalent amount of data in Hindi that the model would have seen for English. And that's internet scale. We have never generated that kind of data. We have never generated that kind of data, especially for low resource languages. So that has been the constraint, that even if we start contributing to the internet today for our languages, most probably it will take another decade or maybe 2 or maybe 3 to get to the equivalent state of data that is there on the internet for English.
Oh wow, okay.
So that's a practical challenge. That was first. Second, obviously, that challenge is now not so much a challenge, which was like compute when we started, because access to GPUs, it was not easy, especially at that particular time. So this is a time where NVIDIA was building their Ampere architecture. So the GPU A100, which is quite famous, that's basically built on Ampere architecture, and NVIDIA has these generations of architecture of their GPUs. It was very high in demand, and the production that they were doing, especially with TSMC and all, it was not to the extent that they could have supplied it to everybody. So there was this supply-demand gap, and because of that gap, I interacted with someone back then, and they were telling me that there is a long waiting time that the GPU access, like once you ask NVIDIA to give it to you today, there is a order queue of almost like a year.
Oh wow.
So after a year, you will actually get the GPUs to ultimately do something. And that was the kind of supply-demand gap. And maybe because of that, and maybe because also the market was not that mature, these GPUs were not available in India.
Okay. Yes.
So even back then, when we were doing like a lot of experimentation, either it was happening on some of the other smaller GPUs. So we still have like smaller gaming GPUs that NVIDIA has built. You and I can buy it, just create like a small cluster, train the models on that. We used to do that at ISC. We used to have like small clusters with all these like low scale GPUs, and then ultimately we used to train models on them. But a large scale data center kind of deployment, I think that has happened only in the past 1 year, where all these high-end GPUs like A100s, H100s, H200s are now coming to India, and they are being deployed at the data center scale. And now getting access to them becomes very easy then. So I think these two are definitely like huge challenges when it comes to like building all these foundation models. And then obviously like the engineering aspect is also like tricky, like what we were discussing even before that. Training models is not a one-shot problem. That, okay, if I start today and I just need like huge compute, say for example, if somebody gave me access to 100,000 GPUs, it's not necessary that I'll be able to train the model, because then the engineering effort actually comes in. You have to program your code base in such a way that the model or the architecture that you are ultimately using is stable, it converges according to your expectations. The kind of data that you have to clean that data in such a way that there is no issue with convergence again. So you need to figure out like all these operational side things or system side things. And then you start training, and then you see that things just mess up. Even during the training bit. So as I describe it, it's not a one-shot problem. Basically, there is a long path to success, but then there are these branches coming out of the effort that you are doing, and most of these branches are just useless branches, but they also teach you a lot on how ultimately the intelligence is being infused into the model. So just to give you a gist, like this was like a very unique moment for us. Like when we were training Pragna, so Pragna is trained from scratch. When we initialized the weights of the model, and we started training the model on the data set, initially it was all garbage. Like we were doing inference just to see what kind of knowledge is getting infused into the model. It was all garbage. Nonsensical stuff was emitted from the model when we were doing the inference. But there was a point where the model started emitting meaningful words. Initially it was just garbage, then comes meaningful words, but the sentence that does not make sense still. And after some time, after some training steps, we then saw that, these are like well-structured English sentences or Hindi sentences. But then again, the sentence does not make sense. And then comes the cognitive part, which is the difficult part at later point, where, sentences were making sense, paragraphs were making sense. And later on, this step came in where we actually fine-tuned the model for, it's not instruction fine-tuning, where you ask the model certain question and the model has to respond. So these two pairings should go together. So if I ask, who is the Prime Minister of India, the model should say Prime Minister of India is Narendra Modi. So it's a causal sort of relationship on the past question that you have asked. That we saw at the later stage. So it was so exciting to see how models learn. It's like literally like a baby. You're teaching the baby, okay, this is A, B, C, D, E, and then the word information, then sentence level information. It's super interesting to see how these models are actually getting trained.
Wow. I learned a lot from this. So a gist for what I learned is, okay, there is data. Data is a challenge. Then there is hardware. That's a challenge. And then there is the human talent around it that brings it all together, right? So they are all sort of challenges that you have to overcome to make an amazing product or model, right? Thank you for sharing that, Abhishek. Something we've talked about the technology now. Something that comes to my mind in terms of how you're building your startup, I would want to start with understanding who you see as competitors in like the sort of work that you are trying to do. Who you see as competitors right now in the market in India or across the globe?
If you look at the Indian market as of now, I personally believe that we are not at a stage to compete, to be very frank. We are just getting started. The entire Indian AI ecosystem is just getting started. And I think that instead of competing, I think we should just come together to figure out how to take that ecosystem to a certain level, and then automatically the competition would kick in, right? So we are not at the level of starting to compete as of now. I think it's collaboration time.
Yeah.
So especially in India, I see that. And I've also been talking to a lot of very young people. They are starting their AI companies right now.
Okay.
Everybody is super excited.
Yeah.
And I feel that all of us need support and help as of now. So it's better to just come together. And we have actually started doing that. There are a couple of my friends, startup founders. We are just working together with each other, helping out each other, creating technologies, and then ultimately taking it forward. So that bit has already started to some extent. I hope that amplifies in the Indian ecosystem overall. When it comes to the global players, I think, yes, I think we should be looking at the competition from there, because majority of the frontier work or the foundation work as of now is actually coming from US. And they dominate that particular market. Now, one thing that I have realized, or what I have learned, is that the users don't care whether the technology is coming from US or from China or from India.
Yeah.
They want the best of the best. And you would have seen that when DeepSeek ultimately came out, a lot of people tried to negate the kind of effort that they have done by saying that, oh, it's distilled out of some particular model and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether that was done or not.
Yeah.
But if you go through the research paper or the technical report that they have published, they have done amazing work on the engineering side. And because they were constrained on the GPU front and all, only then they could actually do it. If they would have imported like from some black market, like all these GPUs, they would have never invested in the kind of innovation that they have done. So that proof of innovation, the technicalities that they have described, is basically a proof that, yeah, they were constrained. And because of that constraint, they were able to do all that innovation out there. And people just love that model. They have been using it. Obviously, that model has biases and everything in it, for sure.
Yeah.
But then people have figured out a way to remove all those biases and then ultimately start using it. Perplexity is doing it as of now.
Okay.
So I have a feel that India, definitely there is no lack of talent. There are amazing people who understand like all these things. Half of these, the frontier research lab in US are being run by Indians as of now. So there is no lack of talent. It's just a matter of like putting everything together, figuring it out. And I also have a feeling that obviously we are a constrained ecosystem. We might not be getting as much funds as what US is getting. So we will innovate in our own ways then. Like we will figure out a way to build something which is substantial, meaningful, given the kind of constraint that we have. We'll also have to take
I mean, that
forward.
is a beautiful way to build something that is meaningful and valuable, right? And definitely the way to go is collaboration and partnerships, that, as you mentioned, right?
Exactly.
Taking things forward that way. So next question would be, from a startup angle, is how did you find your first users? What was that process like? And what was like that sort of ICP that you wanted to tap in for the first users?
Got it. So when it comes to the foundational bit, we are still in the process of doing the research and development side of things. I think the utilization would come once we have a strong model.
Okay.
But what we have also done is that when Pragna was built, we ultimately identified that India is a very voice-first market. That for us Indians, text is not the primary interface. Audio is the primary interface to consume AI. So what we started doing was that we started infusing all these audio capabilities around the Pragna model itself. And what we have as of now, we are calling it a real-time speech API. Essentially, it's very similar to what OpenAI has done with their advanced voice mode, where you can actually, it's an infrastructure layer where any developer can come in, they can utilize our WebSocket-based API, and they can build voice agent for their specific use cases.
Okay.
So say, for example, if somebody is running a BPO and they want to automate or shift their sales services calls on a voice agent, they can actually leverage our API and infrastructure and build out an agent which is very context aware of their customer, of the situation and other things.
Okay.
So that is what we have built out. So now this is what, for this we have started the GTM strategy. There's a lot of traction around voice AI as of now. And I think this would be relevant to talk about like how we ultimately got to our first customer. So what we are trying to do as of now in India, especially when it comes to the voice part, is that the market which already exists is doing certain business. Say, for example, all these BPOs and KPOs, they already have operations when it comes to voice. Right? Now there is a lot of efficiency that we can actually build out if we start automating some of these tasks. That is where voice AI ultimately fits in. So what we have done in our GTM strategy is basically we have reached out to these SIs. SIs are system integrators, people who are essentially building out softwares for all these centers, contact centers. And because they understand the market, their softwares are already being deployed in all these contact centers, but they are human driven as of now. They are very much passionate about bringing AI capabilities into their system because they want their customers to feel the efficiency that AI can actually bring in the entire operation. So we work with these SIs, we integrate our software into their applications, and underneath these applications are already being utilized by hundreds of contact centers across the country, and it's just a matter of enabling that particular feature, and ultimately like that is how our consumption or our API consumption ultimately happens. So that's the track that we have been taking for our strategy.
And in getting to this position of, okay, this is like the use case that you identified that will be best for your customers, what sort of pivot happened? You mentioned that you started with building the model, then you identified voice API, right?
Right.
What was that pivot and how did that come to you?
Yes. So from the very beginning, like I've been very clear that I definitely want to work on some hard problems. So, again, I'm a systems person. I would say that I'm not a domain expert.
Okay.
So, I frankly don't understand, say, for example, how healthcare work. I have a general understanding about a couple of concepts, I would say, but not in-depth idea. So, my entire life, I have been behind the system, building out.
Your domain is deep tech.
My domain is deep tech, especially on high-performance computing, as I said. So again, that is from the system side. I know how to train models. I know how to scale them up. I know how to implement algorithms. I know how to optimize all these CUDA kernels, say, for example. So again, from that point of view, I never wanted to get into the application side of things, although there is a lot of money over there and it's easy traction as well. But for me, hard problem is when you go down the stack when it comes to the generative AI or the AI space. So by stack, what I mean is you have applications, maybe then you have certain tooling bits around which supports application. Maybe then you have infrastructure, and then you have foundation models, and then you have hardware. So what I decided was that, okay, hardware, again, I'm not a electrical, I don't have a background in electronics and electricals, right? So better that I either work on the foundation model side, because that is where my expertise lies, or on the infrastructure side. Infrastructure, I mean like all these in tooling, basically application building part, where I can expose my APIs, infrastructure is deployed at my end, and ultimately users can deploy or leverage my API and not break their head on how to deploy a model, and how to bring everything together, how to orchestrate certain aspects of it. So they can be free of that. So that has been my mindset. So on that, I have been building forever. So you were talking about the pivot part. So it started with the most difficult problem, which is, okay, can we build a foundation model out of India? That is where Pragna actually came in. There were challenges when it comes to building anything beyond Pragna, because as I said, we used all these credits that we had, built out the model ultimately. And then I was hopeful that once we build a POC sort of model, I can go to the VCs, I can convince them to give me like a couple of million USDs to do the R&D bit, and then ultimately build a product around it and then take it to market. But unfortunately, I think for almost like, this is a deja vu moment for me also, because I think second time in India, we have been talking about whether we should be building foundation models or not. The first time it happened was when Sam Altman actually came in, when he was in India. At that time, a lot of conversations happened, whether we should do it, not do it. And there were people who were like against it. Some people were like, "Nahi, we should definitely do it." And what happened ultimately after that conversation was that there was a kind of like a consensus over that India is a use case capital. We should maybe just building use cases, not go into foundation model, and Google's of
utilize
the world,
like existing
models, open source, closed source. And then the entire actually sentiment went down even from the investor side. Because even VCs, investors, started looking at the application side. It obviously it's easy money. I can build like AI has made
low effort, easy
money. If you again, I'm not saying that that's a bad case. Obviously they are solving very, very hard real world problems. But that particular play, I personally feel that you need to create a very strong moat around whatever you are doing.
Correct.
And that moat might come from either you have a very strong distribution or understanding the domain aspects around it. Maybe you have spent like 10 years in the same industry and now you know the pain point that exists over there. That gives you moat, right? So people have been building at that particular layer. But again, coming from system side, I always wanted to innovate on the frontier work. But VCs, there was no money. And then ultimately I was like, fine, we have to sustain. We have to do something where at least some money start flowing in. And that is where that soft pivot happened, where we took the model and we're like, okay, let's just have audio capabilities around the model. And that is definitely like a traction. We got a lot of traction in the voice AI space. And what I personally feel is that will continue. But obviously we have an opportunity now because like there is a call for proposal to building foundation model. And we definitely applied for that. That particular call, if it goes through, I'm very much hopeful that we'll be able to shift our focus again on the frontier tech and start building, which is something very foundational, built from scratch, coming out of India, but again for the world. So that's been very clear. We will prioritize our languages. That is absolutely important. But we have to build for the world. That is where the real market is. We have to go global. That's for sure.
And like sitting on an awesome technology doesn't make sense.
Which is just getting started.
Exactly.
Like, frankly, AI, the boom that happened in 2020. We're in 2025 right now. This technology, commercialization is only 5 years old. Although the technology has been evolving for decades now. But we have a amazing opportunity. Like if we understand these bits today, spend maybe another 1 year or 2 years just to figure out how these SOTA models are built. I think a lot of innovation can actually come out of India, which would be coming out of US or China. But we have to get started on it as of now. Otherwise, we'll never figure out like how these things are built.
Definitely. But first of all, I do want to wish you luck.
Thank you so much.
In getting the grant, which makes this technology possible, right? Which you have been working so hard for. So wish you a lot, my best for that. And Abhishek, you mentioned VCs, like you started talking to VCs. What was like the hardest question that sort of came your way when you started speaking with VCs?
So our pitch has been very different with VCs. Like ours, I personally feel it's not a straightforward pitch with VCs, especially when we are pitching for the frontier bit. So some VCs, they have actually come to me and like when I'm pitching the frontier tech to them, this conversation came up of give me some projections and things like that. It's very difficult because like, even for a classical case, say for example, if I am building some applications, projections are just estimates. Obviously, we can do those estimates depending on the market size and other aspects. It becomes even more difficult to give these projections when you have to do some very hardcore R&D work first, build the product, and then ultimately like have some sort of traction around the product, right? And imagine like when Sam Altman would be raising like funds in the very beginning of OpenAI, and somebody would have asked him, okay, whatever you are building, just give me projections and all. He was building something entirely new.
Exactly. It was like a totally new product. You didn't know user behavior around it. So
Exactly. So in that category of startups where you are trying to maybe innovate, do something entirely new which has never been done, these questions, I don't think they make a lot of sense.
Okay, so like since we spoke about like what VCs want, what kind of questions they're asking, how did you convince them with the sort of revenue model that this sort of AI solution will bring in, right? What is your revenue model when you talk to VCs or like in general, if you want to talk about your revenue?
Right. So revenue model for the voice AI bit is straightforward. So what we have done as of now is that it's basically based on consumption. How that works is that although the system looks central, the voice is the central part of the entire product, but it's not just that. So say for example, if during a call, somebody tells the agent that, look, I am busy today, maybe you can call me tomorrow at 5 p.m. That's basically a call for action. How that action is taken through is through tool calling. So there is another aspect to it where voice interaction definitely will continue, but there is this backend system which is also emitting events. Now you're also giving a lot of context to that particular agent for your user maybe, or for your use case, maybe for some data. Say for example in property search, if the user says that I want some property in Gurgaon, I will have to search from the backend system and supply all this data to the system ultimately to make sense. Only then the system would be able to respond, right? So that system, primarily it's voice, but it's also text. Because all these actions, context setting, everything is happening on the text part.
Makes sense.
So our consumption happens on two front, where one is on the voice part, so that you can simplify in terms of consumption per minute. And then you also have consumption on the token basis, which is primarily for the text. And that is the unit, ultimately is consumption per unit or per tokens of the text part. And then we charge users for the overall consumption that the API does. So it's a classical model, how APIs work on consumption basis. And on top of that, we just have a subscription model where people can just keep on buying these credits on our Tensor Studio platform. And they can start consuming them, and then there are different tiers. Some tiers are specific for individuals and startups, and bigger tiers are for bigger startups or bigger businesses, something of that.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing that, Abhishek. I got to learn a lot today in terms of like how you started, what your thought process was, how it evolved, what sort of pivots came in the way. Another thing that I would like to understand, since like you've been on this journey, and like being a founder is a lonely journey, but then you need to have close confidence. You're a very talented team to kind of aid you in that, right? So how did you come across that team? How did you build that team as a founder? And what are the things that you sort of stood out within team members when you were like hiring them or bringing them on board?
So, especially when you are building deep tech, looking for talent and figuring out like who you can work with and what their expertise are. I think that is also not the classical way is obviously to go and start looking for talent, take their interviews. I don't think that works in the initial phases. Initial phases, I think it's all about trust and maybe some kind of sync with that particular person, and maybe some sort of understanding about the work that that particular person has done in the past. The scale at which we are as of now, I think that has worked very well for us. So we have not done mass hiring as of now. Most of it is based on people who I know or people who basically recommended somebody to us, and then we just had a conversation, did a vibe check with them, understood the kind of technical understanding they have for certain aspects, and if it all works, it works. So that has been the process. So to be very frank, we don't have a proper HR process as of now. I think at scale it would definitely help, but right now it's all about understanding and conferences, technical meetups, they definitely help. Because whenever you go over there, you get to talk to a lot of people. And when you share ideas, people also open up to you and they also share their own idea. And I feel that's a very good judgment of what that person is capable of. So I personally believe that knowledge somebody will gain. That's not a problem. If that particular person has that zeal in them or that dedication and passion that, okay, something I definitely want to learn, I think that is more than sufficient. So if that person is smart, if he or she spends sufficient time on certain things, give him space and time. That particular person will definitely learn. That's for sure.
Awesome. From this, like what I understand is, okay, you're building AI, but the need for human emotion and connection does not go away, right? That is essential in building that AI.
Yes, I think that's true for even building a startup. Like you said, it's definitely like you don't have a lot of people around you who can understand everything that is happening, right? Even your family to a certain extent, like both my mom and dad are super supportive in terms of what I'm doing.
That's amazing.
But then they also don't have the overview of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, right? I keep them informed, but not everything. And then my team members would know certain aspects because they are right then and there when things are happening or when things are essentially breaking most of the time. So it's like a fragmented bit where some people know about certain things, others know about other things. That's
nice. But this is maybe a controversial question, but then you're saying like your friends and family, they know fragmented bits, but do you think AI is someone that knows everything about you? Like whatever is going on in your life?
Not completely, I would say, as of now.
Will we get there?
If I can somehow create a safe space for that particular AI, I'll be okay doing that.
Yeah.
I personally believe in privacy. I personally believe in that information should not be going out, or at least it should be in your control. So even I want to build the system in such a way, because if I am not comfortable giving all my information to a system, how can I ask others to actually do it, right? So as of now, the priority is definitely like not to get into someone's life. It's about creating generalization. So that model or that intelligence should know a lot about, or should know absolutely everything about anything that exists on the planet, not the personal life bit, but general. So that's the goal. And I also believe that reaching that itself is like huge, because then that intelligence can actually create new science for you, can create new medicine for you. Right? So that the field of sciences that the AI would explore and explode would be phenomenal. We'll have like, I was reading this somewhere, that the kind of innovation that humanity has done for almost like 300,000 years, we'll be able to do like just fold that almost double in the next 50 years.
Wow.
Just because of the kind of innovation that has been happening with AI. So there will be literally AI Einsteins out there who will be solving maybe some of the theories of everything maybe for us, or maybe solving problems in quantum mechanics, say for example. So that's the kind of innovation we are actually going towards when it comes to AI. But I'm particularly excited about that.
That is amazing. So like, what I learned from this is, okay, there has been a lot of progress and innovation that happened over like this period of time since when humanity kind of came into the picture. We learned from that, we built new solutions, and now like we're going this route of artificial intelligence. My final question to you would be, for example, like how humanity started at a point, you started on this journey of building Soketlabs at one point, right? If that journey would have started today, what would you have done differently, right? With the sort of resources that are available now, or the kind of understanding you have at this point?
I think I would have done the same thing.
Okay.
But maybe I would say some of the directions that I took in the middle would have been different. And that is primarily because of how the ecosystem is today as compared to 2 years back, say for example.
Exactly,
That is one bit. And then also, as I said, like startup got registered back in 2019. I was working on decentralized data exchange idea, worked with Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs at the Smart Cities Mission Division, almost for like 3 years. That was definitely like a learning experience. But if I would have known, maybe I would have like a time machine or something, would have invested that time somewhere else as well. Because then I figured out that idea was too dependent on the government. I need to invest like a lot on the IoT bit to get like this high velocity, high volume kind of data. And then this particular phase happened. But then again, I think it's also about the movement. That movement was never there at that time, right? That movement came in, and then automatically the path shifted over there, and that has been happening even today. I guess,
Okay. So Abhishek, tell us, have you raised funds for Soketlabs till now?
Yeah. So we have raised an angel round. That happened again almost 2 years back. And we have been utilizing that particular fund, and now we are actually going for a seed round.
That's it. Okay.
So again, talking to a lot of VCs, and hopefully we'll be able to close that particular round soon.
That's amazing. Thank you. And all the best for that.
Thank you so much. Yes, much needed.
Yes.
Would you like to disclose the figure?
Oh man. इसको controversy create
So would you like to disclose that figure of your angel round? Is it out in the public at all, or will be the first one to know?
No, I don't think it's out in the public as of now. I think we might do that like once we have the seed fund in place.
Got it.
Yes.
All right, so guys, stay tuned in to know what the angel round was and what's coming up. So thank you so much, Abhishek, for being with us today and sharing your learnings candidly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for thank you.